It was a cold autumn night, the kind where the air feels thick, as though something unseen is watching. Julia sat alone in her room, scrolling mindlessly through her phone. Her parents were away, and the house was quiet, too quiet. The clock on the wall ticked like a heartbeat, each second stretching longer than the last. Suddenly, she heard a soft whisper, a voice that wasn't hers, yet strangely familiar. "Goodbye, Julia." Her breath caught in her throat. She froze. The voice was faint, almost like it came from the walls themselves. Her eyes darted around the dimly lit room, but nothing seemed out of place. The shadows in the corners shifted, yet no one was there. Shaking, she stood up and crept to the door, opening it just a crack. The hallway was dark, the light from the living room spilling faintly into the corridor. But all she could hear now was her own pounding heart. She closed the door behind her and tiptoed to the stairs, staring into the deep abyss of the darkness below. "Goodbye," the voice whispered again, this time louder, echoing through the house. Julia's pulse quickened. She knew that voice. It was her mother's, a voice she hadn't heard in years. Her mother had died when Julia was only 7, and yet the voice now felt as real as ever. She bolted down the stairs, her feet light but trembling, and approached the living room. She could see her mother's old rocking chair in the corner, the one that used to creak when her mother rocked herself to sleep, humming lullabies. Now, it was eerily still. The whisper came once more, clear and sharp. "Goodbye, I'm waiting for you." Suddenly, the temperature dropped. Julia's breath turned to mist in front of her, and then, from the rocking chair, the soft, familiar sound of a lullaby began to play. She turned to run, but before she could take a step, the chair creaked, and out of the shadows emerged a figure, tall and dark, with a pale, twisted face that resembled her mother's. But something was wrong. The eyes were hollow, and the smile that curled at the corners of its lips wasn't one of love, but of something darker. The figure whispered again, its voice like the wind against her ear. "Goodbye, Julia. It's time to join me." Julia screamed, stumbling backward as the figure reached out with cold hands. The last thing she saw before the room went black was the twisted smile that once belonged to the person who had loved her. When the police arrived the next morning, they found nothing. No sign of Julia, no trace of the eerie whispers, only the rocking chair slowly moving back and forth, as though someone had just been sitting in it. But somewhere, in the stillness of the night, a soft voice continued to whisper, "Goodbye," and the house waited in silence.